I'm David Jones, Chief of Staff for the Cobb Sheriff's Office. Well, growing up, my parents were very involved in the community. My mother was a elementary school principal. She didn't start off that way. She started off as a teacher and kind of worked her way up. And my father retired military, and he also had a civilian job as well at a tire plant. And so, being ingrained in the community, both of my parents are part of Greek organizations. Both of them involved in the church. Both of them believe in giving back. And so that's what I was raised under, giving back. And so I grew up, I was the only child. And so by my mother working in the school system, and in her situation, she was a lot of times the only African American figure, maybe even I remember her first assistant principal role. It was predominantly Caucasian white school, but they would bus in African American students from the projects. And so by my mother being an assistant principal in this school, when there was an issue with a student or a parent, she would kind of take it upon herself to make sure the child had what they needed, whether it was clothes, whatever. And so I just remember, me being in the 6th grade where there was an issue with a parent and the children had nowhere to go. And so my mother would bring the kids home, and they would stay with us for a week at a time, maybe 2 weeks at a time. But I knew my mom would give the shirt off her back, do whatever she could, to make sure that the kids had what they needed. So that was I grew up under that, and I just saw that. And so when I see, kids today, growing up, maybe, be from a single parent home, or maybe lacking something, whether it be just shoes or, clothes. I see kids now wearing pants off, hanging off the butt. A lot of times it's probably the only thing they have. And so if I can do something to kind of show them the right way, how it's perceived, then that's what I try to do. I never thought I would have been working for the sheriff's office, let alone Cobb County Sheriff's Office. When I was 23, I had a bad experience. I ended up getting arrested for something that I didn't do. I was kind of profiled by having on a certain color shirt, and the person that accused me said that the person had an orange shirt on. So I was the closest person that they found with an orange shirt. I ended up getting arrested. I ended up doing a weekend, behind, in jail. And if it had not have been for my parents and being able to get a lawyer, I don't know what that outcome would have been like. But I just remember, walking into that courtroom, and I remember the security telling me I should be ashamed of myself for putting my parents in that situation. They wouldn't allow me to speak, at all to the judge or to anybody, but they just told me, I should be ashamed of myself. The judge never looked at me. She spoke to my parents because she knew my mom was in education, and she apologized to her, but the judge never looked at my face. And so, I went through that and never really internalized it. I just, hey, this is as an experience that I went through. But life went on. At the time, I was applying for a job, and so now I have this arrest on my records. And I was doing contract work at the time. Remember, it's 23. I just graduated. I was a week after graduation, and so I was applying for jobs. I got a job, and so everywhere I went through doing contract work, they would pull my background, and I would have to show, my disposition from this case to show that the charges were dropped for 7 years. I worked for 22 years, I worked for a consulting firm where I traveled a lot. It was a financial advisory service firm, and 22 years. I mean, it was a long time doing appraisals, doing mergers and acquisitions, doing real property appraisal work, and I gained a lot of experience just from working with different people, working with clients, having delivery dates, very project management oriented. And so I was also involved in the community quite a bit. And so because my travel schedule was so rigorous, I would always have to plan, my service and my board commitments around my travel. And so I wouldn't travel certain weeks just so that I could make, those board meetings. And I was looking for an opportunity or another job, career change where I could bridge the two together, kind of my work career, but also my ability to work in the community and participate in boards and that kind of thing. And so I saw the opportunity with the sheriff's office, and the chief of staff role came around, and I jumped on it. And it's the best job I've ever had, best decision I ever made for career-wise. It gives me the opportunity to still, manage projects, also oversee, different departments, but also be involved in the community as well. My dad is an Omega, so I grew up in a household where those cardinal principles were important: manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. And my mother is an AKA, so the Greek household is kind of what we strive by. So when we talk about giving back and those kind of things, I saw them giving back, in the community through their organizations as well. And I was initiated December the 10th, 2004, in Lambda Iota chapter in Columbus, Georgia. As a Georgia state representative for Omega Psi Phi, I oversee 43 chapters throughout the state of Georgia. That includes our graduate chapters, 29 graduate chapters, and our undergraduate chapters that are located on college campuses. That is also encompasses about a little over 2,500 members, financial members, throughout the state. And so our mission is to increase our impact across the state of Georgia and what we do from a social action standpoint, what we do with our youth and our fatherhood and youth mentoring. We're also registering voters at this particular time. This is an important year for elections. This is election season, so we continue to register voters. We continue to have forums to educate the community on voting, your voting rights, and then also candidates. We're a nonpartisan organization, but we try to be educational. We try to let the community know what's on the ballot, what issues are on the ballot, so that they can, take make the decisions for themselves on who to vote for. As Chief of Staff for the Cobb County Sheriff's Office, I can empathize with law enforcement, but I can also understand what it's like to be a civilian living in Cobb County. I remember growing up, or not growing up, but going to school in Cobb, and I remember kind of the stigmas, like you don't want to, be caught in Cobb, or you don't want to be in Cobb after dark. And so, there were very few things, nightlife, that happened in Cobb. That has changed a whole lot. So my first interaction with the command staff was actually on my first day at the command staff meeting, and there was an incident that day. We had a death over the weekend, and we had a death that Monday morning on my first day. And part of my job as chief of staff is to oversee communications, and on that day, I got a full dose of the communication side, right, on how or what we do in a situation like that, where we have 2 inmates who commit suicide within the detention center. And sitting across the table from other law enforcement officers who do this on a day in and day out basis, you know, I was saddened that day because I thought about, you know, the inmates. I thought about the inmates, their families, thought about maybe what they had been going through, you know, to want to commit suicide because no one wants to lose, you know, a person under their custody. And one of the things I was so impressed by is the attention to detail and the empathy that our deputies show our detainees and inmates, because we don't know what type of things that they've gone through. We don't know all the time. We don't know their court cases, you know, and we see the charge, but we don't know all the details. And so therefore we have to treat everyone with a level of respect, no matter what the situation is. And I see that in our colonels, I see that in our lieutenant colonels, and so it makes me want to do more and more to support them. It makes me want to do more in my job to make sure they have the resources, to make sure they have the technology, to make sure that they have, you know, what they need. And we tell the story, because many people don't know what it's like when you walk through these doors. And so, you know, we have to let our citizens know in the community what it's like, you know, and that we care. Even though we're doing our job, we do truly care. And that's why community engagement is so important, that we interact with the community and then we let them know, hey, this is a road that you don't want to go down, but if you do find yourself in this situation, this is a correctional facility. This is not jail. In other words, you come here, this is a time for you to reflect and make whatever correction you need to make in your life. That's why we have a GED program. That's why we have Restart, Realign, where you can actually get a trade while you're in our facility, whether it be electrical or whether it be a welding certificate. When you leave this place, you should leave better. You should leave making a correction or whatever, or, you know, whatever different choice you need to make in your life. And hopefully we can provide more resources so that when a person comes into our hands or our custody or our facility, that we create an avenue for them to be a better person. Black history means to me really American history. And, you know, we hear that, and I know oftentimes it becomes a cliche, but growing up as an African American, I grew up in America, I am history. You know, my ancestors, my mother, my father, my ancestors are American history. You know, they made it here in America. And so they're history to me. My family has their own town in Alabama. It's called McCoy Town, where the family lives on a particular street. We have our own grave site. My grandmother went to school at a little house that's connected to the church. They were sharecroppers. They farm. We continue to still have that land today. Matter of fact, we lease it to a hunting club, certain parts of that land. And so, you know, that history, I don't carve it out and put it on the shelf as Black history as one part of the month. That's everyday life for me. And so even though Black history is important because we have to continue to tell our story, and it's not always highlighted in the forefront, but to me, that's my American history. And even though it's Black history, it's my American history.